The blood on her doeskin dress had dried to a dark rust color by the time Quincy found her collapsed near the creek that ran through his Montana rangeland, barely conscious and fighting to breathe through cracked lips. It was late summer of 1877, and the heat bore down mercilessly on the land surrounding Bannack, Montana. Ethan had been checking his fence lines when he spotted the crumpled form near the water's edge. At first he thought it might be a wounded animal, but as he drew closer on horseback, he realized with a jolt that it was a woman. A native woman, judging by her clothing and the long black hair matted with dirt and what looked like dried blood. He dismounted quickly, his boots hitting the hard earth with a thud. The woman flinched at the sound, and Ethan held up his hands in what he hoped was a gesture of peace. "Easy now," he said softly, approaching slowly. "I am not going to hurt you." Her eyes, when they opened fully, were dark and filled with a wariness that went beyond simple fear. It was the look of someone who had seen too much suffering. Her face bore several scars, some old and silvered, others newer and still angry red. One ran from her left temple down to her jaw, giving her features an asymmetric quality. Another crossed her collarbone, disappearing beneath the torn fabric of her dress. "Water," she managed to whisper, the English words struggling past her parched throat. Ethan immediately reached for his canteen and knelt beside her, carefully lifting her head so she could drink without choking. She gulped desperately at first, and he had to pull it away. "Slow now, or you will make yourself sick." She nodded weakly, and he let her have more, this time in smaller sips. As he helped her, he could see more of her injuries. Her arms were covered in bruises, some fresh, some fading to yellow. There were burns on her hands that looked deliberate, and her ankle was swollen to nearly twice its normal size. "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked gently. She shook her head, whether because she could not or would not, he was not sure. Her eyes darted around nervously, as if expecting someone to appear from the surrounding grassland. "Listen, I have a ranch not far from here. It is just me, no one else. You need medical attention, and I can provide that. Will you let me help you?" The woman studied his face for a long moment, searching for something. Ethan was used to being alone, used to the solitude that came with running a ranch by himself after his parents had died of fever 3 years prior. At 32, he had grown accustomed to the quiet, to making his own meals and tending his cattle without conversation. But looking into this woman's frightened eyes, he felt something stir in his chest, something he had not felt in years. A need to protect, to help, to connect. Finally, she gave a small nod. Getting her onto his horse proved challenging. She could not put any weight on her injured ankle, and she gasped in pain when he tried to help her stand. Eventually, Ethan made a decision. "I am going to have to carry you. Is that all right?" Another nod, though she tensed as he lifted her carefully into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, too light, and he wondered how long she had been wandering without food. He managed to get them both onto his horse, settling her in front of him so she could lean back against his chest for support. She held herself rigidly at first, but as they began the ride back to his ranch house, exhaustion overtook her, and she sagged against him. The Quincy ranch house was a simple but sturdy structure that his father had built 20 years earlier, when they had first claimed this land. It was made of logs and had 3 rooms, a bedroom, a main living space with a kitchen area, and a small room that had once been meant for children that never came. His mother had died before she could give him siblings, and his father had never remarried. Ethan carried the woman inside and laid her carefully on his own bed, the only proper bed in the house. She was barely conscious now, the ride having taken the last of her strength. He knew he needed to clean her wounds and assess the damage properly, but he also knew she might not be comfortable with that. "Miss, I need to tend to your injuries. I promise to be respectful, but some of your wounds need cleaning or they will get infected. Do you understand?" She opened her eyes and looked at him again with that searching gaze. Then she whispered, "Winona. Is that your name, Winona?" "Yes." "All right, Winona. My name is Ethan Quincy. I am going to take care of you." He fetched water and clean cloths. Along with the medical supplies he kept for treating injured animals, and the occasional mishap with barbed wire or farm equipment. As gently as he could, he cleaned the dirt and dried blood from her face, revealing more clearly the network of scars that marked her skin. The one along her jaw was particularly deep, and he wondered what had caused it. A knife, most likely. Her hands were in bad shape. The burns were blistered and weeping, and he carefully applied a salve his mother had made from herbs she had learned about from a traveling doctor. He wrapped them in clean bandages, working slowly and carefully. Winona watched him the entire time, her eyes never leaving his face, as if she was memorizing every detail. When he moved to her ankle, she hissed in pain. It was badly sprained, possibly broken. He wrapped it tightly and elevated it on a pillow. "You will need to stay off this for several weeks," he told her. She nodded, her eyes already starting to close again. "Thank you," she whispered, and then she was asleep. Ethan stood watching her for a moment, this stranger he had brought into his home. He knew nothing about her, where she had come from, or what had happened to her. But looking at her now, vulnerable in sleep, her face relaxed despite the scars, he felt that stirring in his chest again. He shook his head. She needed help, that was all. He was doing what any decent person would do. He left her to sleep and went about his evening chores, feeding the horses and the few chickens he kept, checking on the cattle in the near pasture. His mind kept wandering back to the woman in his bed, though. Who was she? What had happened to her? And why did he feel so drawn to help her, beyond simple human decency? When he returned to the house as the sun was setting, painting the Montana sky in shades of orange and purple, she was awake. She had managed to sit up slightly, leaning against the wall, and she was looking around the room with curiosity. "How are you feeling?" he asked, removing his hat and hanging it by the door. "Better," she said, her voice stronger now. "Thank you for helping me. Are you hungry?" "I am not much of a cook, but I can make a decent stew." She nodded, and he saw a flash of genuine hunger in her eyes. He set about preparing a meal, which was a simple affair. He had dried beef, potatoes, onions, and some carrots he had managed to grow in a small garden plot. As the stew simmered over the fire, he made coffee and cut thick slices of bread he had baked 2 days earlier. "Can you tell me what happened to you?" he asked as he worked. "How did you end up on my land in such bad shape?" Winona was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. Then she spoke. "I escaped." "From where?" "Bad men. White men who took women from my village. They kept us in a place, made us work, beat us if we did not obey fast enough. I am Lakota. My village was near the Yellowstone River. They came at night, took the younger women. Killed the men who tried to stop them." Ethan felt anger rising in his chest. He had heard stories of such things, gangs of outlaws who preyed on native settlements, taking women to sell or trade. It made him sick. "How long were you with them?" 2 moons. Maybe more. Time was hard to track. "And the scars, some of those look older." She touched the one on her face unconsciously. "This one is from before, when the army came to my first village when I was younger, a soldier's knife. He tried to do bad things, I fought. He marked me so no man would want me, said I was ugly now, ruined." Ethan turned to look at her fully, the wooden spoon still in his hand. "Any man who would think that is a fool," he said firmly. "Scars just mean you survived. They mean you are strong. Something shifted in her expression, a softening around her eyes. "You are different from other white men I have met. I would hope most men would not treat you the way you have been treated. You would be disappointed then." He brought the food over to her, helping her sit up more fully so she could eat. She ate slowly at first, then more eagerly as her stomach woke up to the presence of food. He sat in a chair near the bed, eating his own portion and giving her space. "Those men you escaped from, will they come looking for you?" he asked, her face darkened. "Maybe. I tried to cover my trail. Walked in the creek for a long time before I collapsed. But they are hunters, they might find me. Then we need to be prepared. How many were there?" "5. Their leader is called Dutch, mean man, crazy. He liked to hurt us." Ethan nodded slowly. "If they come here, I will protect you. I promise you that." She looked at him with those searching eyes again. "Why? Why do you help me? You do not know me." It was a good question, and Ethan found himself struggling to answer it. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said finally. "And because no one deserves to be treated the way you have been. And maybe," he added, more quietly, "because I have been alone for too long and forgot what it was like to have someone to care about." The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise her. He had not meant to be quite so honest, but there it was. The truth laid bare between them. Winona set down her empty bowl. "I will not be a burden long. When my ankle heals, I will go. I will find my people or make a new path." "You can stay as long as you need," Ethan said. "I mean that." Over the following days, a routine developed between them. Ethan would wake early and do his morning chores, then come back to check on Winona and bring her breakfast. She was regaining her strength quickly, the good food and rest working wonders. He changed her bandages daily, and her burns were starting to heal, though they would certainly leave more scars to add to her collection. During the day, while he worked the ranch, she would rest or, as she grew stronger, move around the house a bit. He had found her an old crutch his father had used after breaking his leg years ago, and she could hobble around somewhat. She insisted on making herself useful, and he came back one afternoon to find she had cleaned the entire house, scrubbing floors and washing windows, despite his protests that she needed to rest. "I cannot just lie there doing nothing," she said stubbornly. "You help me, I help you. That is fair." In the evenings, they would talk. She told him more about her life, about growing up Lakota, about the traditions and stories of her people. She spoke of her mother, who had been a healer and had taught Winona about plants and medicine. Her father had been a warrior, killed in a battle with the army when she was 15. That was when the soldier had scarred her face. Her village had been scattered after that attack, and she had wandered, living with different groups of her people, never quite finding a place to belong. The scars had marked her, made her an outsider even among her own. Some saw her as unlucky, touched by bad spirits. "That is foolish superstition," Ethan said angrily when she told him this. "You are not unlucky. You are a survivor. You say that, but you do not know what it is like to have people look away from you, to have mothers pull their children closer when you walk by, to have men only see you as something to use because they think you are already broken." Her words struck him deeply. He thought about his own loneliness, but he realized it was nothing compared to what she had endured. He had chosen solitude in a way, she had had it forced upon her. "I do not see you that way," he said quietly. "When I look at you, I see someone brave, someone strong, someone beautiful." The last word slipped out before he could stop it, and he felt his face flush. But Winona was looking at him with wide eyes, and he saw something in them he had not seen before. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of trust. "You really mean that?" she said, not a question but a statement of wonder. "I do." She reached out and touched his hand where it rested on the table between them. It was the first time she had initiated contact, and the touch, even through the bandages on her palms, sent a jolt through him. "Thank you, Ethan Quincy. You are a good man." He turned his hand over and gently squeezed hers, careful of her healing burns. "Just Ethan is fine." As the second week passed, Ethan found himself looking forward to the evenings more and more. The ranch work that had once filled his days now felt like an obstacle between him and the time he could spend with Winona. He taught her some English words she did not know, and she taught him some Lakota. They laughed together when he mangled the pronunciation, his tongue tripping over the unfamiliar sounds. He learned that she was 26, 6 years younger than him. She had never been married, though there had been a young man once, before the scarring, who had wanted to court her. After the soldier's knife had marked her, the young man's family had forbidden the match, saying she was bad luck. She told the story matter-of-factly, without self-pity, but Ethan could hear the old hurt beneath the words. "His loss," Ethan said firmly. "Though I confess I am glad he was such a fool, or you would not be here now." She laughed at that, a real laugh, and the sound filled the house with a warmth it had never had before. Ethan realized with a start that he was falling for her. This woman who had stumbled into his life broken and bleeding, she was healing something in him too, something he had not even realized was wounded. But he held back from saying anything. She had been through too much, suffered too greatly. The last thing she needed was him making her uncomfortable by declaring feelings she might not share. So he kept his growing affection to himself and just enjoyed her company, telling himself that was enough. One evening, about 3 weeks after he had found her, they were sitting outside on the porch watching the sunset. Winona's ankle had healed enough that she could walk with only a slight limp now, and the burns on her hands had scarred over. She was wearing a dress he had found in a trunk of his mother's things, and though it was a bit too large, it suited her. "I have been thinking," she said slowly, "that I should leave soon. I am well enough now." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. He had known this moment would come, but he had not expected it to hurt so much. "Where will you go?" "I do not know. Maybe find what is left of my people. Maybe go west to the coast. I have heard there are places there where different people live together, where maybe I could find work." "Or you could stay here," Ethan said, the words rushing out before he could stop them. "You could stay with me. I mean, there is plenty of work on the ranch and I could use the help, and you already know the place, and Ethan," she interrupted gently. "Why do you really want me to stay?" He took a deep breath. This was it. He could keep pretending or he could be honest. "Because I have come to care for you, more than care for you. These past weeks, having you here, it has made me realize how empty my life was before. You make me laugh. You make me think. You make me want to be better than I am. And when I think about you leaving, about this house being empty again, it feels like someone is twisting a knife in my chest." Winona was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the darkening sky. "I was afraid you would say that," she finally whispered. "Afraid? Winona, I am sorry. I did not mean to make you uncomfortable. Forget I said anything. No, you do not understand. I was afraid because I feel the same way, and I do not know if I can let myself have this." She turned to look at him, and there were tears in her eyes. "Everyone I have ever cared about has been taken from me or has turned away from me. I am scared, Ethan. I am scared that if I let myself love you, something terrible will happen, that you will realize I am too damaged, too scarred, that I bring too much trouble." Ethan reached out and took her hand, no longer bandaged. "Look at me. Really look at me. I am not going anywhere. I am not scared of your scars or your past, and you do not bring trouble. You brought life back into my world. You brought joy. And if you will let me, I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that you are worthy of love, that you are beautiful and strong and everything good." A tear rolled down her cheek, following the path of the long scar on her face. You really mean that? With everything in me?" She leaned forward and he met her halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that was soft and tentative at first, then deeper, more certain. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard and Winona was smiling through her tears. "I will stay," she said. "I will stay with you, Ethan Quincy." He pulled her close, holding her against his chest, and felt her arms wrap around him. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "Thank you." They sat like that as the stars came out, holding each other, neither wanting to let go. For the first time in years, Ethan felt complete. And for the first time since the soldier's knife had marked her, Winona felt like she might finally have found a home, but their peace was not to last undisturbed. 2 days later, as Ethan was working on repairing a section of fence, he saw riders approaching from the east, 5 of them, moving at a steady pace across his land. He felt his stomach drop. Winona had been hanging laundry behind the house, and he quickly strode over to her. "Get inside," he said urgently. "There are riders coming." "Could be nothing, but it could be them," she finished, her face going pale. She hurried into the house while Ethan went to meet the riders, his rifle in hand. The men reined in their horses about 20 feet from where he stood. They were rough-looking characters, unshaven and hard-eyed. The one in the lead was tall and thin, with a scar that split his upper lip. "This must be Dutch." "Help you gentlemen," Ethan called out, trying to keep his voice neutral. Dutch leaned forward in his saddle, his eyes scanning the property. "Maybe you can. We are looking for a woman, an Indian woman, scarred up real bad. She ran off from us about 3 weeks back and we tracked her this direction. You seen anyone like that?" "Cannot say I have," Ethan lied smoothly. "I am out here alone, do not get many visitors." "That's so." Dutch's eyes narrowed. "Mind if we take a look around? She is dangerous, you see. Killed one of our men when she ran. We need to bring her to the law." "That is not what happened," came Winona's voice from the doorway of the house. She stood there, Ethan's spare rifle in her hands, pointed at the riders. "I defended myself from men who kidnapped me and others from my village. You are the criminals, not me." Ethan cursed under his breath even as he felt a surge of pride at her bravery. "The lady says she is staying here." "I suggest you move along." Dutch laughed, a cold, unpleasant sound. "The lady? Is that what you call an Indian whore? Listen, friend, I do not know what story she told you, but that woman is our property. We paid good money for her. Now you can hand her over peaceful-like, or we can take her and you can have a grave on your own land. She is not property. She is a person and she is under my protection. Now get off my land." The 5 men began to spread out, and Ethan knew this was about to get ugly. He raised his rifle and beside him he heard Winona cock hers. "Last chance," Dutch said. "Same to you," Ethan replied. For a moment, everything hung in balance. Then one of the men, a burly fellow on the right, made a move for his gun. Ethan fired, the shot deliberately going high over the man's head. The horses spooked, rearing and neighing. Another man fired back, and Ethan felt the bullet whiz past his ear. Then Winona fired, and one of the men cried out, grabbing his arm. The shot had been precise, disabling but not killing. The men's horses were panicking now, hard to control. Dutch was screaming orders, trying to get his men organized, but the combination of the gunfire and the spooked horses was working against them. Ethan fired again, this time hitting the ground right in front of Dutch's horse, which reared so violently that Dutch nearly fell off. "Next one is not a warning shot," Ethan yelled. "Get out of here now." The injured man was crying that he needed a doctor, and the others were struggling to keep their horses under control. Dutch glared at Ethan with pure hatred. "This is not over," he snarled. "You are protecting a murderer. I will bring the law down on you." "You do that," Ethan said. I will be happy to tell the sheriff about your kidnapping operation. Now ride before I change my mind about letting you leave." Finally, the men wheeled their horses around and rode off. The injured man slumped over his saddle, his companions supporting him. Ethan and Winona stood watching until they were out of sight, neither lowering their weapons until the riders had disappeared over the ridge. Then Ethan turned to Winona. "Are you all right?" She nodded, but he could see she was shaking. "I am sorry. I should have stayed hidden. But I could not let you face them alone, and I wanted him to see that I was not afraid anymore." Ethan took the rifle gently from her trembling hands and pulled her close. "You were incredibly brave, and you are right. We faced them together." But as he held her, he worried. Dutch had threatened to bring the law, and while Ethan was confident that he and Winona had been in the right, he knew that justice in Montana Territory in 1877 was not always blind or fair. If Dutch spun the right story, there could be trouble. That evening they talked about what to do. "Maybe I should leave," Winona said. "If I am gone, they have no reason to bother you." "Absolutely not. We are in this together. Besides, I think we should go into town tomorrow, talk to Sheriff Morrison ourselves. Tell him what really happened. He is a fair man from what I have heard. He will listen. And if he does not, then we will figure it out. But running is not the answer. We did nothing wrong, and I am not going to let you face this alone." The next morning they rode into Bannack together. The town was small but bustling, the buildings mostly wooden structures lining a single main street. The sheriff's office was near the center of town, and they tied their horses outside before heading in. Sheriff Ben Morrison was a man in his 50s with gray streaking his brown hair and a weathered face that spoke of years spent in the harsh Montana sun. He looked up as they entered, his eyes taking in Ethan and then lingering on Winona, noting her scars and her native features. "Help you folks?" he asked, his tone neutral but not unfriendly. Ethan explained the situation, laying out everything that had happened. Winona added her own account of being kidnapped from her village, held by Dutch and his men, and her eventual escape. She showed the sheriff her scars, the old and the new, as evidence of the abuse she had suffered. Morrison listened carefully, occasionally asking questions. When they finished, he leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a moment. "This is a serious accusation," he finally said. "You are telling me these men are running a kidnapping and trafficking operation." "That is exactly what I am telling you," Ethan said. "And they came to my ranch yesterday, armed, and demanded I hand her over. They opened fire first. Did you hit any of them?" "She did," Ethan said, nodding to Winona. "Shot one in the arm. He is wounded but alive." Morrison nodded slowly. "I have heard rumors about Dutch and his gang. Nothing concrete, mind you, but stories. Settlers going missing, native women disappearing. But no one has ever filed a formal complaint, and I have had no jurisdiction to investigate." He looked at Winona. "Are you willing to make a formal statement, miss?" "Yes," Winona said firmly. "I will tell you everything. And if you can find the place where they kept us, there might be other women still there, or evidence. You know where this place is? I can show you the direction. It is maybe 2 days' ride northeast of Ethan's ranch. There is an old abandoned mining camp. They use the buildings there." Morrison stood up. "All right, I will need to gather a posse. This is serious business. Ethan, you willing to ride with us? We could use men we can trust." "Absolutely." "Good. We will head out tomorrow at first light. Miss," he said to Winona, "I will need you to stay in town, somewhere safe. If what you are saying is true, Dutch might come back and we need to keep you protected." "She can stay at my ranch," came a voice from the doorway. They all turned to see a woman standing there, probably in her 40s, with kind eyes and graying blonde hair. "Sorry for eavesdropping, but the door was open. I am Martha Fletcher. I run the boarding house. If this young lady needs a safe place, she is welcome to stay with me. No charge." Ethan felt a wave of gratitude toward this stranger. "Winona, would that be all right with you?" Winona nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Fletcher. Just Martha, dear. Come on, let us get you settled. These men have planning to do." As Winona followed Martha out, she looked back at Ethan, worry clear in her eyes. He gave her what he hoped was a reassuring smile. "I will be back soon," he promised. The posse that rode out the next morning consisted of Sheriff Morrison, Ethan, and 4 other men from town. They were all armed and provisioned for several days. Winona had given them detailed directions, and she had also drawn a rough map showing the layout of the old mining camp and where the women had been kept. The ride was long and hard, and Ethan found his mind wandering to Winona. He had only known her for about a month, but already she had become the most important person in his life. The thought of anything happening to her made him feel physically ill. But more than that, he wanted justice for her, for the suffering she had endured. He wanted Dutch and his men to pay for what they had done. They reached the area Winona had described on the afternoon of the second day. The old mining camp was situated in a narrow valley, the buildings sagging and weathered but still standing. They approached cautiously, but it quickly became apparent that the place was deserted. "Looks like they cleared out," Morrison said grimly as they rode into the camp. "Probably right after the confrontation at your ranch, Ethan. They knew we might come looking." But even though the men were gone, the evidence of what had taken place there was undeniable. Inside one of the buildings, they found chains bolted to the walls, stained blankets, and personal items that had clearly belonged to women. There were native beadwork pieces, torn bits of clothing, and scratches on the walls where someone had been marking days. "God above," one of the posse members whispered. "It is all true." Morrison's face was hard as stone. "Spread out. Look for anything that might tell us where they went or give us more evidence of what happened here. We need to document everything." They spent the rest of the day searching the camp. They found more evidence of the trafficking operation ledgers showing transactions, though no names were written, just numbers and amounts of money. There were also indications that this had been going on for at least 2 years. "We need to track them," Ethan said. "They cannot have gotten far with an injured man." "Agreed," Morrison said. "But we need to be smart about this. These are dangerous men and they outnumber us. We will track them, see where they are headed, and then decide on our approach." They picked up the trail heading west and they followed it for another day. But Dutch and his men were moving fast, clearly spooked by the prospect of law enforcement on their tail. Eventually, Morrison made the decision to turn back. "We will send word to the federal marshals," he said. "This is bigger than just a local matter. These men have been operating across territorial lines, and we need the resources to hunt them down properly." Ethan was frustrated, but he understood the wisdom in Morrison's decision. They rode back to Bannack, arriving late on the 5th day since they had left. Ethan went immediately to Martha Fletcher's boarding house, desperate to see Winona. She met him at the door, throwing herself into his arms the moment she saw him. "I was so worried," she said, her face pressed against his chest. "I thought maybe something had happened to you." "I am fine," he assured her, holding her tightly. "We found the place. You were right about everything. Morrison is going to contact the federal marshals. They will hunt Dutch down." "So it is over. Not completely, not until they are caught, but you are safe now. That is what matters." That night back at the ranch, they sat together on the porch again, the place that had become their spot. "I have been thinking," Ethan said slowly, "about us, about the future." "What about it, Winona? I know we have not known each other long, just over a month. But I am sure about what I feel. I love you. I want you to stay here, not just as someone I am protecting or helping, but as my partner. My wife, if you will have me." He had not planned to propose like this without a ring or any preparation, but the words had come tumbling out. Winona looked at him with wide eyes. "You want to marry me, more than anything. But people will talk. A white man and a native woman. There are laws in some places against such marriages. Not in Montana territory, not yet anyway, and even if there were, I would not care. I love you, Winona. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, and I want to spend my life with you. What do you say?" She was quiet for a moment, and Ethan felt his heart pounding. Then she smiled, that beautiful smile that lit up her whole face despite the scars. "I say yes. Yes, I will marry you, Ethan Quincy." He let out a whoop of joy and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. When they broke apart, both were laughing and crying at the same time. They were married a week later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Bannack. Sheriff Morrison stood up as a witness, along with Martha Fletcher. The preacher, Reverend Thomas, had initially been hesitant about marrying a white man to a native woman, but Morrison had a quiet word with him, and the reluctance disappeared. Winona wore a new dress that Martha had helped her make, pale blue with white lace trim. Ethan wore his best suit, which he had not put on since his father's funeral. As they exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other for the rest of their lives, Ethan felt a completeness he had never known before. After the ceremony, Martha hosted a small celebration at the boarding house. A few of the townspeople came, curious about the unusual couple. Some stared at Winona's scars, and Ethan saw her shrink a bit under their gaze. But he put his arm around her and held her close, making it clear that anyone who had a problem with his wife would have a problem with him. An older woman approached them, her face lined and kind. "I heard about what you survived, dear," she said to Winona. "You are very brave. And Mr. Quincy, you are a good man for standing by her. We need more people willing to do the right thing, regardless of what others might think." "Thank you, madam," Ethan said, feeling a warmth toward this stranger. As the evening wound down, they rode back to the ranch together, now as husband and wife. The house that had felt so empty for so long now felt like a real home. That night, they consummated their marriage, coming together with tenderness and passion, each movement a reaffirmation of their vows. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, Winona traced patterns on Ethan's chest with her finger. "I never thought I could be this happy," she said softly. "After everything that happened, after all the pain, I thought maybe I was not meant for this kind of joy." "You deserve all the happiness in the world," Ethan replied, kissing the top of her head. "And I am going to spend every day trying to give it to you." As summer turned to fall, they settled into married life. Winona proved to be an invaluable partner on the ranch. She knew how to work hard, and she brought skills that Ethan had never thought about. She had learned about healing plants from her mother, and she started a medicinal garden. She also proved to be an excellent shot, often hunting and bringing back game for their meals. But more than that, she brought life and warmth to the house. She sang while she worked, old Lakota songs that Ethan did not understand but found beautiful nonetheless. She told him stories in the evenings, tales of her people, of trickster spirits and brave warriors and wise grandmothers. She taught him more of her language, and he taught her to read and write English, which she picked up quickly. News came in October that the federal marshals had tracked down Dutch and his gang in Wyoming territory. There had been a gunfight, and 2 of the gang members had been killed, including Dutch himself. The other 3 had been captured and would stand trial. Morrison rode out to the ranch to deliver the news personally. "It is over," he told them. "Dutch is dead, and the others will hang for their crimes. They found evidence linking them to at least a dozen kidnappings and several murders. You helped bring some justice to a lot of people, both of you." Winona cried when she heard the news, tears of relief and closure. "It is really over," she whispered, and Ethan held her, understanding the weight that had just been lifted from her shoulders. That night, as they lay in bed, Winona turned to Ethan with a serious expression. "There is something I need to tell you," she said. "Something I have not shared yet." Ethan felt a flutter of nervousness. "What is it?" "When I was with Dutch and his men before I escaped, something happened. One of the other women being held there was very old, much older than the rest of us. She was a medicine woman taken because Dutch thought she might have gold hidden somewhere. She did not, of course. But before she died, she told me something." Winona paused, gathering her thoughts. "She said she had a vision about me. She said that I would escape, that I would find a good man with a kind heart, and that together we would build something important. But she also said I carried a great secret, something that would change the path of many lives." "What secret?" Ethan asked. "At the time, I did not understand. I thought maybe she was confused, that her age and the suffering had addled her mind. But now I think I know what she meant." "Tell me." Winona took a deep breath. "Before the soldiers attacked my first village when I was young, my father told me something. He said our family was descended from a great chief, one who had united many tribes long ago. And he said that there was a sacred place in the mountains where this chief had hidden something valuable. Not gold or jewels, but knowledge. Old knowledge, written down and preserved. Ways of healing, histories, prophecies. He said that one day, when the time was right, someone from our bloodline would need to find this place and share the knowledge with those who would listen." Ethan sat up, intrigued. "Did he tell you where this place is?" "He started to, but then the attack happened. He died before he could tell me everything, but I remember some of it. He said it was in the mountains to the south in a cave marked by 2 stone eagles, and he gave me this." She reached under her pillow and pulled out a small leather pouch that Ethan had never seen before. From it, she extracted a flat piece of stone about the size of her palm with markings carved into it. "What is it?" Ethan asked, taking it carefully. "A map, I think, or part of one. My father said there were 3 pieces, and that all 3 were needed to find the sacred place. He had this one. He did not know where the other 2 were, only that they had been scattered among different tribes to keep the location secret." Ethan studied the stone in the lamplight. The markings were intricate, clearly intentional, but their meaning was not obvious to him. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because the medicine woman said that when I found the good man, we would need to find the sacred place together. She said it was important, that the knowledge there could help many people, both native and white, to understand each other better, to heal old wounds. And she said that if we did not find it, the knowledge would be lost forever, because I am the last of my bloodline who knows anything about it." Ethan looked at his wife, this remarkable woman who continued to surprise him. "You want to search for this place?" "I do, but not just for me. For all the people who have suffered like I did. If there is knowledge there that can help bridge the gap between our peoples, then maybe my suffering had a purpose. Maybe this is why I survived everything, so I could do this." Ethan thought about what she was saying. It would be a significant undertaking, possibly dangerous. But looking into Winona's eyes, he saw determination and hope, and he knew he could not say no. "Then we will search for it," he said. "Together. But we need to be smart about it. We need to learn more to find those other 2 pieces if we can. This is not something to rush into." Winona nodded. "I know, but I wanted you to know. I wanted to share this with you because you are my husband and my partner, and this secret has been weighing on me." "Thank you for trusting me with it," Ethan said, pulling her close. "We will figure this out together. Everything together." As winter approached, they began to research and plan. Winona tried to remember everything her father had told her about the sacred place. Ethan talked to people in town, trying to learn about native history in the region without revealing too much about what they were looking for. Sheriff Morrison proved helpful, suggesting they talk to an old trapper named William Perry who lived in the mountains and had spent years trading with various tribes. They visited Perry in late November, making the long ride up to his cabin in the foothills. He was a grizzled man in his 70s, with a long white beard and eyes that were still sharp and bright. When Winona showed him the stone piece and explained what they were looking for, he leaned back in his chair and studied them both carefully. "That is a heavy burden you are carrying, young lady," he said finally, "and a dangerous quest you are considering. There are those who would not want such a place found on both sides of the divide." "I know," Winona said, "but I feel I must try." Perry nodded slowly. "I respect that. And as it happens, I might be able to help you. About 20 years ago, I was trading with a band of Shoshone up near the Idaho border. Their chief was a man named Red Cloud, and he showed me a stone similar to this one. Said it was a piece of a sacred map, but that his people no longer knew what it was for. The knowledge had been lost. He offered to trade it to me for some rifles, but I told him I could not take something sacred, even if he did not know its purpose. But I remember the markings. They looked similar to these. Do you know if he still has it?" Ethan asked eagerly. "Or if the tribe is still in that area?" "Red Cloud died some years back, but his son, Running Bear, leads the band now. They move around, but they usually winter in the valley near the Snake River. If you can find them, and if Red Cloud passed the stone to his son, you might be able to convince them to let you have it or at least see it." It was valuable information, but winter was coming on fast, and traveling to Idaho in the snow would be treacherous. They decided to wait until spring. In the meantime, Winona became pregnant. She realized it in January, and when she told Ethan, his joy was boundless. "A child," he said wonderingly, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. "Our child. Are you happy?" she asked, suddenly nervous. "Happy, Winona, I am overjoyed. We are going to be parents." Then a thought struck him. "But the quest, the sacred place, maybe we should wait. I do not want you traveling when you are carrying our baby." "We have months before the baby comes," she said, "and I feel strong. If we can find Running Bear's band in the spring, we can see the second stone piece before the pregnancy makes travel too difficult. Please, Ethan. This is important to me." He agreed, though he worried. As winter loosened its grip and the snows began to melt in March, they prepared for the journey. They would need to travel west and then north, skirting around the mountains to reach the Snake River Valley. It would take at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. They set out in early April when Winona was about 4 months along. She was showing now, but the pregnancy was progressing well, and she felt healthy and strong. They rode at a steady but not punishing pace, camping at night under the stars. Despite the challenges of the journey, there was something beautiful about it, just the two of them and the wide open country. They encountered a trading post after a week of travel, and learned that Running Bear's band was indeed camped in a valley about 3 days' ride north. They pushed on, and finally, on a bright spring morning, they saw the smoke from the Shoshone camp rising in the distance. Approaching a native camp as outsiders was always risky, but Winona rode ahead, calling out in a mixture of Lakota and hand signs that they came in peace. The Shoshone warriors who met them were cautious but not hostile, especially when Winona explained who she was and why they had come. They were brought before Running Bear, a man in his 40s with a commanding presence and intelligent eyes. Winona explained their quest, showing him the stone piece her father had given her and telling him about the sacred place and the knowledge it held. She spoke passionately about the potential to bridge the gap between their peoples, to preserve important traditions before they were lost forever. Running Bear listened carefully, and when she finished, he was silent for a long time. "My father did have such a stone," he finally said. "He told me it was sacred, but that our people had lost the knowledge of its purpose. He made me promise to keep it safe, to never trade it or lose it, even though we did not know what it was for." "Will you let us see it?" Ethan asked. "If our pieces match, it would be a sign that the quest is real." Running Bear considered this. "I will show you, but I will not simply give it to you. If this is truly as important as you say, then you must understand that it belongs to all our peoples, not just to you." He went into his lodge and returned with a leather bag similar to the one Winona carried. From it, he extracted another flat stone, carved with different but complementary markings. When they laid the two pieces side by side, it was clear they were meant to fit together. The markings aligned, creating a more complete picture. "It is real," Winona breathed. "The map is real." "Then my father was right to keep this safe," Running Bear said. He looked at Winona, at her scarred face and her swelling belly, and something in his expression softened. "You have suffered much, I can see that, and you carry new life. I will not give you this stone, but I will make you an offer. When you are ready to search for the sacred place, send word to me. I will come with you, and I will bring the stone. This is something that should not be undertaken alone, and if we are successful, my people should be part of the discovery." It was more than Ethan had hoped for. "Thank you," he said. "Your wisdom and generosity honor us." They spent 3 days with Running Bear's band, sharing meals and stories. Winona spoke with the tribe's elder women, who gave her advice about the coming birth and shared remedies for common pregnancy ailments. When they finally left, heading back toward Montana, Winona seemed lighter, more hopeful than she had been in months. "It is all coming together," she said to Ethan as they rode. "The medicine woman was right. This is my purpose." Their son was born in late August on a morning when the sky was so blue it looked like it had been painted. The birth was difficult, and there were moments when Ethan feared he might lose Winona. But Martha Fletcher, who had come to the ranch to help with the delivery, was experienced and capable. When the baby finally emerged, screaming lustily, and Winona was confirmed to be all right, Ethan felt like his heart might burst from relief and joy. They named him Samuel, after Ethan's father. He had his mother's dark hair and his father's blue eyes, and Ethan thought he was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Watching Winona hold their son, crooning to him softly in Lakota, Ethan felt a profound sense of gratitude for the strange and wonderful path that had led them to this moment. The first year of Samuel's life was busy and exhausting, as all first years with a baby are, but it was also filled with joy and laughter. Samuel was a happy baby, quick to smile and curious about everything. As he grew, he showed signs of both his parents' temperaments, his mother's determination and his father's calm steadiness. When Samuel was about 14 months old in the fall of 1879, Winona brought up the quest again. "I think it is time," she said. "Samuel is old enough to travel with us, or we could leave him with Martha for a few weeks. And I feel called to complete this, Ethan. The pull has been growing stronger." Ethan was hesitant to leave Samuel, but he understood the importance of the quest to Winona. They decided that Martha would care for Samuel, and they sent word to Running Bear that they were ready to search for the sacred place. He responded a month later, agreeing to meet them in Bannack in early November. Running Bear arrived with 2 of his warriors and his own piece of the stone map. "There is a third piece," he reminded them. "We only have 2. How do we find the third?" "The third piece was with the Nez purse," Winona said. "My father told me that much, But with the war last year and the flight to Canada, I do not know if it still exists or where it might be. The Nez Perce War of 1877 had been a tragedy, with Chief Joseph's band fleeing across Montana, pursued by the army. Many had been killed or captured, and the survivors had been sent to reservations far from their homeland. Finding a specific artifact from that tribe would be incredibly difficult. "We might not need it," Running Bear suggested. "Between the two pieces we have, there is much information. Perhaps it is enough to guide us." They studied the stones together, trying to interpret the markings. Some were clearly geographical mountains, rivers, distinctive rock formations. Others were more symbolic and harder to understand. But one thing became clear. The sacred place was somewhere in the Bitterroot Mountains, in the area where Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming came together. "It is a large area to search," Ethan said. "We could spend months looking and never find it." "Then we must be systematic," Running Bear said. "And we must trust in the signs. The old ones would not have made this impossible. They would have left clues for those who knew how to look." They set out in mid-November, a small party consisting of Ethan, Winona, Running Bear, and his two warriors, Black Elk and Tall Tree. The weather was cold but clear, and they made good time heading into the mountains. They followed the clues from the stones, looking for the landmarks indicated in the carvings. After 2 weeks of searching, they found the first major landmark, a distinctive peak that looked like a crouching bear, exactly as depicted on the stone. It gave them a reference point and narrowed their search area significantly. From there, they followed a river south, looking for a waterfall that split around a large boulder. They found it 3 days later, and from the waterfall, the stones indicated they needed to head east into a narrow canyon. The canyon was difficult to navigate, with steep walls and a floor strewn with rocks, but they pressed on. Black Elk, who had climbed ahead to scout, suddenly called down excitedly. When they caught up to him, they saw what had caused his excitement. 2 massive stone formations that looked remarkably like eagles with outstretched wings, facing each other across the canyon. Between them, partially hidden by brush and fallen rocks, was the entrance to a cave. "This is it," Winona whispered, her eyes shining. "This is the place my father told me about." They approached carefully, not knowing what they might find. The entrance was narrow, but it opened into a larger chamber inside. Ethan lit a torch, and its light revealed something astonishing. The walls of the cave were covered with paintings and symbols, hundreds of them, telling stories and recording knowledge. And in the center of the chamber, protected in a natural alcove, were bundles wrapped in leather and skins, remarkably well preserved in the dry mountain air. "By all that is holy," Running Bear breathed. "It is real. It is all real." They spent hours in the cave that first day, carefully examining the paintings and beginning to unwrap the bundles. Inside were items of immense historical and cultural value. Medicine bags with dried herbs and instructions for their use, skins covered with writing in various native languages, beadwork that told stories, ceremonial items, and even a few weapons that were ancient even by the standards of the current native peoples. But the most important discovery was a series of stones, much larger than the map pieces, that had been carved with extensive text. Running Bear, who could read several native languages, worked to translate them. "These are histories," he said in wonder. "Histories of our peoples, going back generations. And these," he pointed to another section, "these are teachings. Wisdom passed down about living in harmony with the land, about medicine, about justice and governance." "This is incredible," Ethan said. "This knowledge, it could change everything. It could show white settlers that native peoples have always had complex societies, sophisticated systems of knowledge. It could help create understanding, or it could be destroyed by those who do not want that understanding, Winona said quietly. We must be careful about what we do with this. They spent 5 days at the cave, documenting everything they could. Ethan had brought paper and pencils, and he made sketches of the paintings while Running Bear copied the texts. They took only a few small items with them, things they could use as proof of the cave's existence, but they left most of it intact. This place must be protected, Running Bear said on their last evening there. We must find a way to preserve it and share the knowledge, but not in a way that will lead to its destruction or exploitation. They made a pact, the 5 of them, to keep the exact location secret for now while they worked on a plan to properly document and protect the site. They would share the knowledge they had gained, but would not reveal the cave's location until they could be sure it would be respected and preserved. The journey back was filled with excitement and planning. Winona was energized in a way Ethan had never seen before. "This changes everything," she kept saying. "This proves that our peoples have as much right to this land as anyone, that we have knowledge and history that matters." When they returned to Bannack in early December, they went straight to Sheriff Morrison. They showed him the sketches and copies they had made and told him about the cave. Morrison listened with growing amazement. "This is beyond my authority," he said finally. "This is something that needs to go to the territorial governor, maybe even to Washington. If what you are saying is true, and I believe it is, this is one of the most significant historical discoveries in the region." Over the following months, they worked with territorial officials, with scholars from back east who traveled to Montana to interview them, and with representatives from various native tribes. It was not always easy. There were those who dismissed their claims, who said that whatever they had found could not be that important. There were others who wanted to immediately excavate the cave, to take everything and put it in museums back east, far from the land it came from. But Winona, Ethan, and Running Bear stood firm. They had formed a committee with representatives from several tribes and from the territorial government. They insisted that any study of the cave must be done respectfully, with native peoples involved at every stage, and that the ultimate goal must be preservation, not exploitation. It took nearly 2 years, but eventually they succeeded. In 1881, the territorial governor declared the area around the cave a protected site. A small group of scholars, both native and white, was authorized to study and document it properly. Winona and Running Bear were both appointed to the Oversight Committee, ensuring that native voices would always be part of the process. The knowledge from the cave began to be shared, carefully and thoughtfully. Some of the medical knowledge was published, helping doctors understand herbal remedies that had been used effectively for centuries. Some of the histories were recorded and preserved, giving future generations a more complete picture of the region's past. For Winona, the completion of the quest brought a profound sense of closure and purpose. She had survived so much pain and trauma, but it had all led her to this. She had found the sacred place, as the medicine woman had predicted, and she had shared its knowledge with the world. More than that, she had done it alongside people she loved, her husband and the new friends they had made in Running Bear and his people. Life on the ranch continued to bring its own joys and challenges. Samuel grew into a bright, energetic child who loved both his parents fiercely. When he was 4, he was joined by a sister, whom they named Lily. She had her father's blonde hair and her mother's dark eyes, and she was as sweet-natured as Samuel was mischievous. The town of Bannack had changed too. Ethan and Winona's relationship, unusual as it had been at the start, had become accepted. Winona was known now as a healer and a respected member of the community. People came to her for medical advice, for help with difficult births, for treatments of illnesses that the town doctor could not cure. She had found a place, a purpose, beyond just being Ethan's wife, though she treasured that role deeply. Running Bear and his band visited regularly, and a deep friendship had developed between the two families. Running Bear's own children played with Samuel and Lily, and the adults would sit long into the night, talking about the state of the world and their hopes for the future. There were still injustices, still prejudices, and still violence against native peoples. The world had not magically become fair because they had found one cave full of knowledge. But they had made a difference, had created a small pocket of understanding and respect. And they had shown that it was possible for people from different backgrounds to work together, to build something meaningful. On a warm evening in the summer of 1885, Ethan and Winona sat on their porch, watching Samuel and Lily chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. Samuel was now 7, tall for his age and already showing signs of being a natural horseman. Lily, at 2, toddled after her brother with determined steps, her laughter ringing out across the ranch. You ever think about how different things might have been? Winona asked softly, her hand finding Ethan's. If you had not found me that day by the creek, Ethan squeezed her hand gently. I think about it sometimes, how empty my life was before you, how I was just going through the motions, existing but not really living. I was ready to die that day, Winona confessed. I had lost everything. I was broken in body and spirit. I had nothing left to live for. And now, she turned to look at him, and in the fading light her scars were just shadows on her face, but her eyes were bright and alive. Now I have everything. I have you, my love. I have our children. I have purpose and community. I have hope. She paused, then added softly, You saved my life that day, Ethan. In every way a person can be saved. You saved mine too, he replied, pulling her close. You brought light and love and meaning into my world. You showed me what it really means to be alive. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their children play. Then Samuel came running up to the porch, Lily held carefully in his arms. Mother, father, look. Lily caught a firefly all by herself. Lily opened her chubby hands to show them the glowing insect, her face alight with wonder. Winona praised her daughter, gently showing her how to let the firefly go so it could fly free again. Lily watched it drift away, its light blinking on and off, and clapped her hands with delight. Come on, both of you, Ethan said, standing and scooping Lily up. Time to get ready for bed. Samuel groaned but did not protest too much. They all went inside together, the little family that had been born out of tragedy and pain, but had become something beautiful and strong. As Ethan helped Samuel into his nightshirt and Winona nursed Lily before putting her down, they moved through the familiar routines of evening. But there was nothing ordinary about it to Ethan. Every moment, every small domestic task felt precious. He had learned not to take any of it for granted. After the children were asleep, Ethan and Winona returned to their bedroom. They made love slowly and tenderly, each touch a reaffirmation of their bond. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, Winona spoke quietly. There is something I need to tell you. Ethan felt a flutter of nervousness, memories of the last time she had said those words flooding back. What is it? I am pregnant again. Joy surged through him. Another baby, truly? Yes, I am about 2 months along, I think. Are you happy? He kissed her deeply. I am overjoyed. Our family continues to grow. I was thinking, Winona said, snuggling against him, that if it is a boy, we could name him after your father and mine. Samuel was for your father. Perhaps this one could be Running Wolf, which was my father's name, or we could use the English version, something like William Wolfe Quincy. And if it is a girl, I thought perhaps Sarah, after your mother, with a middle name from my language. Sarah Winona Quincy. What do you think? I think any child of ours will be blessed, no matter what we name them, Ethan said, but I like your suggestions. Let us wait and see who joins our family, and then we will decide. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and in the spring of 1886, Winona gave birth to another son. They named him William Wolfe Quincy, honoring both of their fathers. He was a calm baby, content to watch the world with serious eyes, very different from the energetic Samuel or the cheerful Lily. With 3 children, life on the ranch became even busier. Ethan hired a young man named Tom to help with the cattle and the heavier ranch work, giving him more time to spend with his growing family. Winona continued her healing work, though she had less time for it now. Martha Fletcher often came to help with the children, having become like a grandmother to them. Running Bear visited when William was 6 months old, bringing news. The cave has been fully documented, he told them. The scholars have completed their work, and the site is to be permanently sealed and protected. Your names and mine are recorded as the discoverers. Our peoples will remember what we did. It seems like a lifetime ago that we set out searching for it, Winona said, bouncing William on her knee. So much has happened since then. You have built a good life, Running Bear observed, looking around at the ranch, the children playing, the obvious love between Ethan and Winona. You have created something that bridges 2 worlds. Your children will grow up understanding both sides of their heritage. That is a powerful thing. I hope they will be part of a new generation, Ethan said, one that does not see such hard lines between peoples. One that judges individuals by their character, not by their blood or the color of their skin. It is a good dream, Running Bear said, and perhaps with enough people dreaming it, it will come true. The years passed, each one bringing its own mix of challenges and joys. Samuel grew into a thoughtful young man who loved the ranch and showed every sign of wanting to continue his father's work. Lily developed a passion for healing like her mother, often following Winona on her calls to help sick neighbors. William was the scholar of the family, always asking questions, always wanting to know more about everything. In 1890, when Samuel was 12, a traveling photographer came through Bannack and convinced Ethan and Winona to have a family portrait taken. They gathered in their best clothes, Ethan in his suit, Winona in a beautiful dress that combined native beadwork with a more traditional style, and the 3 children scrubbed and combed. The photograph captured them as they were, a family united by love, bridging 2 worlds, looking forward to the future with hope. Winona had that photograph framed and hung it over the fireplace, where she could see it every day. Sometimes she would stand looking at it, marveling at how far she had come from that desperate woman collapsed by a creek, ready to die. She had found not just survival, but a full and meaningful life. She had found love, family, purpose, and peace. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1887, Ethan gave Winona a gift. It was a leather-bound journal, the pages blank and waiting to be filled. I want you to write your story, he said. Everything that happened to you, everything we have been through together. Not for publication or for scholars, but for our children and their children. So they will always know where they came from, what you survived, and how we built this life together. Winona had taken the journal and held it to her chest, tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. I will do that. I will write it all down, so our story is never forgotten. And she did. Over the following years, in the quiet moments when the children were asleep and the ranch work was done, she would sit at the kitchen table and write. She wrote about her childhood, about the attack that scarred her, about the kidnapping and escape. She wrote about the day Ethan found her, about falling in love, about the quest for the sacred cave. She wrote about their children and their dreams for the future. Ethan would sometimes read over her shoulder, occasionally adding his own perspective or correcting a detail she had gotten wrong. It became a shared project, their way of preserving not just the facts of their story but the emotions, the love that had carried them through everything. As the 19th century drew to a close, Montana was changing rapidly. Bannack had declined as mining opportunities dried up, but the Quincy ranch continued to thrive. Ethan and Winona had built something sustainable, something that would last for generations. On a crisp autumn evening in 1899, the whole family gathered on the porch. Samuel, now 21, had just announced his engagement to a young woman from town, the daughter of the blacksmith. Lily, 17, was preparing to go to nursing school back east, wanting to formalize the healing skills she had learned from her mother. William, 13, was already talking about becoming a teacher or maybe even a lawyer. "Look at what we have built," Ethan said to Winona as they watched their children laughing together, planning their futures. "Three amazing human beings who will go out into the world and make it better." "We have been blessed," Winona agreed. "More than I ever thought possible." She was 49 now, her hair showing streaks of gray, her face lined with the years but still beautiful to Ethan. The scars were still there, would always be there, but they had long since ceased to define her. She was known in the community as a healer, as a mother, as a woman of wisdom and strength. The scars were just part of her story, not the whole of it. Ethan was 53, his own hair more gray than brown now, his face weathered by years of outdoor work. But he was healthy and strong, and he woke up every morning grateful for the life he had, for the woman beside him, for the family they had created. "You remember what I told you that first night?" Winona asked. "That I would not be a burden long, that I would leave as soon as I was healed." Ethan laughed. "I remember being terrified you meant it. I remember thinking I could not let you go. I am glad you did not. I am glad I stayed. I am glad for every single day we have had together. As am I, my love, as am I." They sat together as the stars came out, their children's voices a pleasant murmur in the background. The life they had built, against all odds, stood solid and strong around them. The ranch would continue. Their children would carry forward their values of respect and understanding, and their story would be remembered. Years later, when Samuel took over the ranch and built his own house on the property, he and his wife lived in the original ranch house while Ethan and Winona moved into a smaller cabin nearby. By then, Lily had returned from nursing school and opened a medical practice in a larger town 2 days' ride away. William had become a teacher, working on a reservation, helping native children learn to read and write while also preserving their own languages and traditions. Grandchildren came, beautiful blends of cultures and traditions, and Ethan and Winona delighted in them all. They told the children stories, taught them lessons, and showed them by example what it meant to love deeply and completely. On a peaceful morning in the summer of 1910, Ethan and Winona sat outside their cabin, now both in their 60s. They moved more slowly now, their bodies showing the wear of hard lives, but their love had only deepened with the years. "We should write an ending to the journal," Ethan suggested. "In case we do not get another chance." "We have time yet," Winona protested, but she knew he was right. They were not young anymore. That evening they sat together at the table where Winona had written so much of their story. Together, they composed a final entry, "To our children and grandchildren, and to all who come after. Our story began with pain and desperation but became something beautiful. We learned that love can heal the deepest wounds, that understanding can bridge the widest divides, And that family is not just about blood, but about the bonds we choose to create. We have lived a good life, full of joy and meaning. We have loved each other fiercely and completely. And we have no regrets. May you all be as blessed as we have been. May you find love as true as ours. And may you always remember that no matter how dark things seem, there is always hope for a better tomorrow. With all our love, Ethan and Winona Quincy. They both signed it, and Ethan sealed the journal to be given to their children when the time came. But that time was still years away. They had more life to live, more grandchildren to spoil, more sunsets to watch from their porch. They had found each other against impossible odds, had built a life that neither could have imagined in those early desperate days. And they would face whatever came next the same way they had faced everything, together. The ranch continued to prosper under Samuel's management. He had inherited his father's work ethic and his mother's wisdom, and he was teaching his own children the same values. The Quincy name became respected throughout Montana, known for integrity, hard work, and a willingness to treat all people fairly, regardless of their background. Lily's medical practice grew, and she became known as one of the most skilled healers in the territory, combining modern medicine with the traditional knowledge her mother had taught her. She married a fellow doctor, and they had 2 children together, continuing the family tradition of bridging different worlds. William's work on the reservation was changing lives. He had helped establish a school that taught both English and native languages, that honored traditional knowledge while also preparing children for the modern world. He married a Shoshone woman, Running Bear's granddaughter, bringing the 2 families even closer together. Running Bear himself lived to be quite old, dying peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78. His last words were about the sacred cave and how proud he was of what they had accomplished together. His death hit Ethan and Winona hard, as they had lost a dear friend. But they took comfort in knowing that his legacy, like theirs, would continue through their children and grandchildren. As the years rolled into the 1920s, Ethan and Winona became the patriarch and matriarch of a large, sprawling family. There were now great-grandchildren toddling around the ranch, and the original cabin that Ethan's father had built had been expanded and renovated multiple times to accommodate family gatherings. On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1927, the entire family gathered for a massive celebration. There were nearly 40 people, their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and close friends who had become like family. A huge feast was prepared, and people came from hundreds of miles away to honor the couple whose love story had become legendary in the region. Ethan and Winona, both now in their 70s and moving slowly but still sharp of mind, sat in places of honor. As the celebration continued around them, with music and laughter and children playing, they held hands and watched it all with deep contentment. "We did well," Ethan said softly to his wife. "We did," she agreed. "We built something that will last. I love you, Winona Quincy. I have loved you from the moment I saw you by that creek, fighting to stay alive, and I will love you until my last breath." She turned to him, her eyes still bright despite the years. "And I love you, Ethan. You gave me my life back when I had lost everything. You showed me that I was worthy of love, that I could be more than my scars and my pain. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They kissed, there in front of all their family, and the room erupted in cheers and applause. It was a perfect moment, a crystallization of everything they had built together. Ethan passed away peacefully in his sleep in the winter of 1930, at the age of 84. He had lived a full and meaningful life, and he died knowing he was deeply loved. Winona mourned him deeply, but she did not break. She had learned long ago that she was stronger than any pain, that she could survive anything. But she missed him terribly, missed his presence beside her, his steady strength, his unwavering love. She lived for 3 more years, spending her time with her family, telling stories about Ethan, about their life together, about the quest for the sacred cave and all the adventures they had shared. She made sure that every child in the family knew their history, understood where they came from and what they represented. On a spring morning in 1933, Winona died at the age of 82. She was surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Her last words were, "Tell Ethan I am coming. Tell him to wait for me." They buried her beside Ethan on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains where they had found the sacred cave. The headstones were simple but spoke volumes. Ethan Quincy, 1845–1930. Beloved husband, father, grandfather, he saw beyond scars to the beauty within. Winona Quincy, 1851–1933. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she survived everything and taught us how to live. The ranch continued under Samuel's children and then their children. The journal that Ethan and Winona had written together was treasured by the family, passed down through generations as a reminder of where they came from and the love that had started it all. The sacred cave remained protected, its exact location still kept secret by a small group of descendants and tribal leaders. The knowledge that had been found there continued to be shared and studied, helping to preserve native history and wisdom. And in the decades and centuries that followed, the Quincy family remained in Montana, carrying forward the values that Ethan and Winona had instilled. They were known for their fairness, their respect for all people regardless of background, their dedication to bridging divides and building understanding. The story of the lonely rancher who took in a scarred native woman became a local legend, told and retold, sometimes embellished but always at its core about love conquering pain, about 2 people from different worlds who found each other and built something beautiful together. Their love story had changed not just their own lives but had rippled outward, affecting their children, their community, and all who came after. They had proven that love, real love, could transcend any barrier, could heal any wound, could build bridges where others saw only divisions. And so their legacy lived on, a testament to the power of compassion, courage, and unwavering love. 2 people who had every reason to give up on life had instead found each other and created something that would endure long after they were gone. It was a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West, forged in hardship and ultimately triumphant, leaving behind a family, a community, and a legend that would never be forgotten.